thought maybe I'd come an hour early. Turns out I came a month early. But I took my nephews and niece out for dinner because my sister was in America. And anyway, so we had a good time anyway. But it's a pleasure to be here. And following that very nice introduction, sometimes people say that I've started a bit of a South African mafia at the Jerusalem Post, and it's certainly nice to be among you tonight. You know, on a Friday, sometimes we have Hirsch Goodman on the back page, who people say is from the left, and just to balance him, we have Martin Sherman on the inside page, and he's from the right. And hopefully I'm somewhere in the center. We also have Warren Goldstein, the Chief Rabbi of South Africa, which I think was quite an accomplishment that I got him to write for us every 2 weeks. So there's some Fridays we have 5 South Africans writing, in one edition, and someone actually wrote a letter to say, you started this South African mafia at the Post, which I find as a compliment, not an insult. So anyway, it's nice to be among some of the big machas in the South African Jewish community here tonight, and I'm pleased you could make it, some of whom write for us, and you're encouraged to write some more. My relationship with Telfed, just to briefly tell you before I address the subject of the evening, and I won't talk for too long, we'll open it up to a dialogue, started about 24 years ago when I made Aliyah. And I remember coming to the Telfed offices in Tel Aviv and meeting with my mother, who passed away a few months earlier in Johannesburg. Rosiv Linde was the Aliyah officer in Durban, and then moved to Johannesburg to be the national director of the South African Union of Jewish Women. And when she said, when I come to Israel, I should look up Shula, and I just remember it rhymes, Shula and Beulah. So I came to look up Shula first, and I went to Tel Aviv, and she said, maybe I should go to Beulah, and Beulah could introduce me to Tzvi Pantanovitz, who, as you probably all know, as Pants, who became my mentor, and who I love to this day, and remain in touch with him and his wife. And I walked in, and he said, it just so happens that we had someone named Michael Wade, who was also an ex-South African working at the radio at the time. Michael was sick, he had leukemia, and we need someone to replace him. So it was sort of bad luck, good luck, and I started working at the radio exactly 23 years. I went to the army, and then 23 years ago I started working at the radio with Tzvi. And so it was through Shula and then Beulah that I got to find my job in journalism, and after a while, the radio, as much as I loved it, I realized I needed to expand because it was not enough of a challenge, and I started working at the Jerusalem Post 16 years ago, and it's different. It's very different working in a newspaper and a radio, and I still very much love the radio and miss it. I don't know if anyone still listens today. I do try to now and again. It's at 6:30 in the morning, and 12:30 and 8:30. And you can hear it on the internet as well, and I still miss it and love the people there. But the Jerusalem Post was a real challenge, and I had no real aspirations to be editor. I loved my job as news editor, as night editor, and then suddenly, in June last year, David Horowitz announced that he'd had enough after 7 years. At the time, we had no idea what he had planned, and he recommended me to succeed him, and I met with our owners. Our owner's name is Eliezer, by the way. I'll tell you about him if you want. He's a very astute businessman. And we hit it off immediately. And so suddenly, before I knew it, I was the editor of what I think is the most important Jewish newspaper in the world. We certainly see ourselves as, in the big scheme of things, more important than, let's say, Yediot Achronot or Haaretz, which may claim to be the biggest newspapers or most important newspapers in Israel, but on our website, for example, on an average day, we get 400,000 hits, individual visitors, and on a good day, we can get up to 2 million individual people reading the Jerusalem Post per day, which is up there with the top 10 newspapers in the world. So we have to be very careful what we do. As you can imagine, and I'm sure I'll hear from you shortly, we get criticism all the time. about our coverage. If it's too left, it's too right, the crossword puzzle's wrong, the newspaper smudges in my hands, you name it. Today I had already at least 10 calls of people who are mad about something. So I'm used to criticism, and don't worry, I've got tough skin, I can take it, and I'd be happy to hear from you. I really take criticism seriously, which is why I always bring my notepad and write things down and try and address things immediately. But I thought I'll just give you a quick briefing on how I see the situation in Israel in 2012, which is what I was asked to talk about. So let me tell you firstly that I'm an optimist. I mean, I'm a journalist and a realist, and I know what the situation is, but you know, growing up in South Africa, as we all did, if someone had told us that one day Nelson Mandela would be free and become president, you know, I would have said, you're nuts. And if someone had told me a year or two ago that all these dictators in the Middle East are going to be befelled, or whatever the word is, and replaced somehow, I would have said, you're also nuts. And I think I've learned from my own life that, you know, anything's possible, especially here in the Middle East. And I truly believe that there is a good future ahead of us. I believe in the future of, of Israel, and I believe in the future of the region as well. I think that we're going through a difficult period, and certainly the threat from Iran is not to be taken lightly. And what Iran is doing at the moment is using its proxies, terror proxies all over the world, to try and avenge certain attacks that we carried out in Iran, which is why we saw today, for example, an attack thwarted in Azerbaijan, and we've seen similar attacks thwarted in Georgia, in India, in Thailand, and various other parts of the world. So far we've been lucky. Hopefully this will continue. But I think the Iranians are very dangerous. I think the reason Prime Minister Netanyahu felt like he had to go and talk to Obama about Iran's nuclear program is because we have concrete information now that Iran is building a nuclear bomb, and there's no way Israel can come to terms with that. We can't live with an Iranian nuclear bomb as we lived, let's say, with the Soviet nuclear bomb, or as we lived with the North Korean nuclear bomb. I think it's a very clear message that we have to convey to the world, that we can't just sit by and watch this happen, because otherwise there could be a nuclear holocaust, and there's just no way any Israeli government can allow someone who says he wants to destroy Israel to build a nuclear bomb. Because we have, as Bibi famously said, you know, if it talks like a duck and walks like a duck and acts like a duck, you have to treat it like a duck. And this guy, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, talks very seriously against Israel all the time, and I think he's a serious threat, and I think he needs to be taken seriously. And I think more and more the world is getting on board, and I really, I'm not paranoid at all. I think we have many, many millions of friends all over the world.